All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, one of the many debates that oftentimes surround awards or accolades like MVP or most valuable player is how accurately they depict who the best player in that league actually is. And as we know, if you watch professional sports for long enough, the player who wins most valuable player is not necessarily the best player in that particular league. Now, we know that Steve Nash has won 2 NBA MVPs. Jason Kidd never won one. But was Steve Nash a better player than Jason Kidd? Well, that question was asked to Paul Pierce, and he's going to give his answer. Of course, they're going to talk about it, and I'm going to chime in.
Bobby, you mentioned when Steve Nash was on the show yesterday, the sort of epic battle between Kidd and Nash back in 2006. Now, our jump producers got caught in such a YouTube rabbit hole after you said this that we lost productivity on the show for an hour, and I believe they would run this entire game back if they could. But the question that came to mind was, look, I'm sorry, I'm going to break this down a little bit. Would you rather have Steve Nash or Jason Kidd? And I want to start, tell us about this game.
Well,
Steve Nash's skill level was off the charts. He was pretty much ambidextrous with his handle and with his passing. Like, you have players who have a great left hand, and then you have players who dribble with their left hand like it's their natural hand. And Steve Nash could do that equally well. That's what made him so potent. Because when you can shoot like that, it makes you seem quicker than you actually are. A lot of people forget that at one time, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, and Kevin Johnson were all playing point guard for the Phoenix Suns at the same time in the late 90s.
As good a game this was, I used to sit in a suite 119 with Rod Thorne, and I had to leave the suite to go down and watch this game courtside when I got into overtime. As good of a game, and I mean, it was the epic. I mean, Kidd had 42, 14, and 14, and Nash.
Now, this is how you know that stats don't always tell the whole story, because Magic Johnson is 5th on the all-time assist mark, but he's the greatest point guard of all time, and it's not even particularly close. John Stockton was a phenomenal point guard, but he was someone who was able to eventually become the all-time assist leader because of his overall stamina and durability. He played about 20 years in the NBA.
Nash had 38, 14, and 6, and we were an okay team. This was a good Phoenix team that we played against with Marion, but this was an epic double overtime, 161, 157. It was like one of those 80s throwback games.
Right. That's insane. All right, so we're watching all these clips, and we were supposed to talk about pass first point guard.
Who's the better passer?
Instead, we're just going to talk about, Paul?
That's close in regards to who's the better passer, Jason Kidd or Steve Nash. That's very, very close. But in regards to who's the better overall player, that's Jason Kidd, because he can provide a great impact on both the offense and the defense. As I stated in a previous video, Jason Kidd is one of the top 5, or definitely top 10, maybe even top 5 most impactful all-around NBA players that I've ever seen.
Put your money where your mouth is. Would you rather have Jason Kidd or Steve Nash in their prime?
Jay Kidd. I mean, he could do more.
I agree, sir.
He was a better rebounder. The passing is toss-up. Better defender, and Kidd.
Now, Steve Nash was a better shooter. So, if you're talking about who's a better point guard for the D'Antoni system, that's probably going to be Steve Nash, probably. But in just about every other system and every other NBA offense, I'll put it like this. If you don't know who the rest of your players are going to be and you had to pick your point guard first, I would pick Jason Kidd over Steve Nash, no doubt about it.
Kidd is one of the top 10 all-time three-point shooters, quiet as kept. So,
well, that's quantity, not quality.
I gotta go with Jason Kidd because I've had epic battles with him in the playoffs.
I feel like you're like a nasty player, so you going with the guy with a little bit more nasty in his game.
Oh my god!
But I'm going with Nash because I haven't seen
these
Come
millennials.
on now. I am a millennial, but come on now.
Just
Nash
wasn't old enough to watch it. That's all.
My
I
God.
am 26. 26.
I love how she says, Bobby, I love how she says, I'm 26, Bobby. What?
And beyond that, Paul Pierce is acting like Steve Nash is 10 years younger than Jason Kidd. They're probably only about 2 years apart in age. I believe Jason Kidd was drafted in 94, Nash was drafted in 96. And I think that Jason Kidd came out early, so they might be the same age. One of you brothers can correct me on that.
But bent defenses. Have you ever seen a player that bent defenses like Steve Nash? Like, to me, that just changed
Steph Curry, but
the way
yes.
it changed the way you played the game.
That's why I said I wish.
Well, yes, because of the proficiency of his long-range shooting. So you could make the case that, yes, Steve Nash was able to alter how the defense played against him a little bit more than a Jason Kidd, because Jason Kidd was not as much of a threat from the outside.
Social media was back when 2001, 2002 to realize how great of a player that Jason Kidd was, and being a part of that.
He's a little biased.
We won 27 games in 2000, 2001, and we brought back the same team
with
Jason Kidd and went to the finals.
Thank you, sir. There are very few players in the history of the NBA that could turn around a moribund franchise as quickly as Jason Kidd did.
So I am going J. Kidd all day.
Both of them are biased.
Okay, but Steve is, as good as J. Kidd was, especially from beyond the arc, Steve Nash was a better shooter. He just was.
Definitely.
Steve Nash is one of the great shooters in the history of the NBA. When you look at the fact that he could shoot off the dribble, he could shoot with a hand in his face, he could shoot going left, he could shoot going right, mid-range, long-range, free throw shooting, and finishing at the basket. He was a great finisher at the basket as well. But I'm not quite sure if that makes up for all of the other things that Jason Kidd did better than him, especially on defense.
It's a great argument, but Jason Kidd, this is Jason Kidd. He had his own shoe. I never seen I know Nash had his own shoe, but Kidd had his own.
Steve Nash has 2 MVP trophies, so he doesn't need a shoe.
Well, yes, he has 2 MVP trophies, but Jason Kidd has more finals appearances. Jason Kidd was able to lead a team to the finals twice. Steve Nash was never able to do that. And oftentimes, his team, the Phoenix Suns, would have the best record in the Western Conference. So the fact that he was unable to lead his team to the NBA Finals, just to make a finals appearance, that's a little bit glaring on his part. Jason Kidd was able to do that on multiple teams. He also made the finals with the Dallas Mavericks. He also helped to turn around the New York Knicks. A lot of people don't understand that in 2013, he was as impactful. Of course, he was not getting the glory of a Carmelo Anthony, but his impact on that team in 2013 is very difficult to quantify in numbers, because Jason Kidd was not a stat player by that time. He was more of an impact player by that time. But once again, his impact on that New York Knicks team in 2013, very, very difficult to understand unless you watched it.
Listen.
I like that.
If you have the J. Kidd shoe, if you had a J. Kidd shoe, you're the...
Somebody needs to help Paul Pierce with his arguments.
The better player. If you had your own shoe.
He's the culture, I get it. It was a culture.
Oh, man. Kids, listen. Don't watch YouTube today.
Don't even. I watched it.
And please tell me Jason Kidd is not the better player. If you can honestly tell me that.
Well,
just all around game.
Okay, so there's 2 ways to look at this. You can say just in a vacuum, which one's better, or which one would you rather have on your team, because there are 4 other guys on your team.
It depends on the scheme that you're running on offense. If you're running the Mike D'Antoni system and you have 4 very good shooters, you might take Steve Nash over Jason Kidd.
And I can get 4 other guys to help make up for the few things that Steve Nash is lacking, but I cannot get 4 other guys to make up for what to add in what he can do.
In today's NBA, they both fit, and here's why. Yes. Jason Kidd at the point guard standing at 6'4" with the switching defenses. Now you put him in pick and roll. He switches on to LeBron in the finals late game. You want Kidd or Nash doing that? Well, see how LeBron and him exposed Curry.
But I got 4 other guys.
Yeah, that's fine. But now, and then...
Allegedly, you have 4 other guys. I understand both their arguments, but Jason Kidd is the better player overall. And there's just so many things that he can do.
And on the offensive end, he's spotting up, knocking down threes. Maybe he's not coming off pick and rolls, knocking them down like Nash, but he's knocking them down, so you can't leave him open. So he fits in today's mold and the way the game is played, more so than Steve Nash, because...
I'm not going to quite say that Jason Kidd fits into today's mold more than Steve Nash, because one can certainly make the case, as I already did earlier in the video, that today's game is predicated off of what Steve Nash and Mike D'Antoni initiated in the mid-2000s. Once again, that is the reason why they gave Steve Nash those 2 MVPs. Not so much because he necessarily was having a better year than all those other players or that he was a better player than them, even though I think that he certainly deserved the first one in 05. And in 06, one could make the case that there may have been other players where the vote could have been close. I believe they won 62 games that year in 2005. He definitely deserved the MVP for 2005. Now, 06, who knows? Some people say Shaq could have gotten it. Of course, you have the Kobe fans who say Kobe averaged 35 a game that year. But it was very, very close. 06, who knows? But 05, definitely Nash should have gotten that one.
Nash because his ability to defend multiple positions.
Well, I mean, they're both really good.
No, they're both really great.
We'll be discussing this a little more later. I do want to get to the fact that Luke walked.
But anyway, that's basically it on that. I thought that this was a very good discussion, a good debate, particularly pertaining to those two players who are relatively congruent in regards to what they were able to do in the NBA during pretty much the same time period. And there are a lot of players in the history of the NBA where you can have very good debates due to the fact that they provided a relatively equivalent level of impact or impetus forward for their team. And I'll probably be following up with that in other videos. So peace.